Thank you for your time. My name is Beitullah, and this is Bet on It, Shooting from the Hip. Slim, how you doing, my man?
I'm having a good day. How are you?
Not so bad. I hope you're going to enjoy today's subject. But before we dive into that, there's something I'd like to read to you. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we are doing here on Bet on It, Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud. It's a thought exercise, jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find we are prone to using adult language and expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything that we say. We are not experts of any kind. We are just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information in the hopes that you will find them fun, interesting, and entertaining. We encourage you to invest time in searching out these subjects and come to your own conclusions. Now on with the shit show. And today's show, we are going to be covering a very timely and relevant subject, which is artificial intelligence, synthetic intelligence, synthetic biological intelligence, transhumanism, posthumanism. So it seems like a lot, but it's really relevant, and it's relevant in terms of the way that it might be contributing and influencing the direction of society. It's not a new idea. So the idea has used to be referred to as eugenics, but that ended up having kind of a bit of a dirty connotation because of Nazis and World War II and the association that, to determine or to deem who might be fit to live and those unfit. This idea has been around since the earliest of organization of human societies. So I'm just going to read from my note package really quickly, just to give you a quick breakdown of the history. So the word eugenics comes from ancient Greek and it means goodwill, and genes come into being growing. So is a set of beliefs and practices aimed to improve the genetic quality of the human population. Now in that time, the only way that they could change an organism, which they actually employed, and we still to this day employ, in animal husbandry, we only allow select animals to breed within a certain type of animal to try and draw out the best qualities within that animal, right? So people were thinking about this long before there was the technology to facilitate it, and the technology I'm referring to is also is known as CRISPR-9 and genetic screening. So we have the capacity now to actually do that sort of thing. So it opens the door that this very idea feeds into the idea of transhumanism, posthumanism, and the way that we can facilitate all that is your requirements are artificial intelligence, synthetic intelligence, and then ultimately the amalgamation of artificial and synthetic intelligence with biological intelligence, which creates a third kind of way of looking at this whole thing. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, is the study of computer sciences and robust data sets for problem solving. That's ultimately what drove it, right? And the subfields within it are like machine learning and deep learning, because of their perfect memory, computers allow for things that we as biological organisms or biological intelligence have expressed limits on, right? In terms of like our memory storage or our ability to recall information, right? I mean, I'm certain you experience it, like where you swear you know something, but you can't exactly pull that memory to draw on that tidbit of information that you like a day or two ago you were completely on top of.
Oh yeah, even shorter term, like object permanence. I'll set something down, go to another room, come back to get it, and I'm like,
what did I do?
Where did yeah. What kind of magic is
Yeah, that kind of befuddlement. I think everybody knows that experience. I could have swore I put my car keys here. Or where the hell are my car keys?
Yeah, like 10 minutes later.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So now the real distinction with artificial intelligence is it's a simulated intelligence, and it's supposed to simulate human intelligence, right? So it parallels the way that we think, but with the additional capacity where now it's got in terms of memory limits, it's unlimited. So, but the focus in the way that they created it was to mimic the way that we think, right, as human beings. So there's two main categories in artificial intelligence: weak AI, and most of us experience weak AI. If you ever use Alexa, or what's the other one, the competing one? Oh shoot, it's Alexa I can't remember the name. Siri?
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. Or you've played any kind of computer chess. That's weak AI. So that's AI that's like that drives gaming and that sort of thing. Even though the AI now that's driving gaming has to become more and more sophisticated, because the users now are so much more sophisticated that there's a demand now. We want it. In my day, you could play Pong for hours, right? Or was it the side-scrolling games and stuff like that? And that would be considered weak AI. Now, strong AI is a type of AI that can perform any task that a human can, and probably more efficiently, right? So that's, you can see then we're within commercial use and stuff that they're all leaning into more stronger AI, right? And again, it's just to make everything more efficient, to enhance the efficiency of from something as simply as gaming function to organizing your day and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I wanted to interject. If you think about weak AI in games now, if you have virtual reality, there's the simulation of a character, and it might look real enough for you to be immersed in the experience. With strong AI, it's getting incredibly...
That it's almost got a personality and character of its own that...
Yeah, it at least could fool a person.
Well, and that's the ultimate, I think that's the ultimate test. I can't remember the name of the test, where to determine the strength of the AI by how long it takes for a human interacting with it, unbeknownst to them that it's AI, for them to figure out that what they're talking to is not another person but a machine.
Yeah, with one of the most popular products like ChatGPT, there still are flaws where it could read through a paragraph and it'll understand that there's certain key elements, but it doesn't exactly register the information the way you and I would.
Right.
Like, it might give you a wrong fact. Apparently it's not the best at math, but it's like that critical thinking.
But that's eventually they're going to iron out those problems, right?
And with no limitations of, like, if you think really strong AI in the future, it's going to be incredible. Like, we're in the baby stages.
I remember we talked about this in a previous episode when we were discussing sperm whales and how they were using ChatGPT-4 to try and decode the language structure to their echolocation and the clicking that they do. So you can see, like, it's everywhere now, right? And now, having said that, we can, I think I'd like to just keep it kind of, for a moment, at least keep it like, reflect on like where you're seeing it within society now. Because there's common AI applications that, like I said, that go on every day that most of us are completely like oblivious to. Like, we talked about Siri and Alexa, so these virtual assistants, right? They have recommendation systems now that what they do is they help to prevent e-commerce fraud, so you can protect your banking information and that sort of thing, right? There's autonomous vehicles, right? There's NLP or natural language processing, for chatbots and customer service, right? So image and facial recognition in security systems, medical diagnosis, and healthcare systems. So anything that could be treated as information or raw data now is included in the development of artificial intelligence, because there's no, as you can see, there's no limits to how much it can be integrated within our society.
Yeah, one thing to look forward to is if it stays in that kind of box where it can work with raw data sets, but it doesn't understand contextuality, context. Like,
Right.
I don't know why I can't pronounce it right now.
It's okay. Context.
Right. That's where I think the issue would be. And there's a lot of amazing things that come with AI, of course. But one thing to worry about is like, oh, at what point does it lack context? Like, how much learning does this machine need?
Well, but isn't that, well, okay, so isn't that the argument that at some point the complexity of the algorithms will mimic the complexity of, say, organic intelligence, to the point where now it appears sentient, right? Like that, and then it doesn't lose things as a result of not being able to understand the context. That eventually, and if they're self-learning, how long will it take for it to kind of refine itself? So then now you, in the course of a conversation or an interaction with an artificial intelligence, and because it parallels human thinking, you couldn't distinguish it from one of us.
Right, and you can't understand exactly what it's going for either, because humans have tells. Computers do not.
And well, again, because
that reference,
it's okay. No, it's totally cool. But I think there's also the idea of emotions, like that. Can you create emotions as an algorithm? Right? I don't know that you can. For us, it's this complex. It's psychological. Emotions are part psychological, part physiological, and how do you translate that into something that's supposed to be paralleling the way that we think, right? When emotions contribute so much to how and what we might think, right? Which an artificial intelligence wouldn't necessarily be able to tap into. So it does. So now is it just cold hard logic and reason that it's operating from? Because remember, part of the emotional content too for humans, compassion, passion, and these are very considerable factors in the way humans function, but it's a missing component in artificial intelligence. Now, whether you could make the argument that it might make it better or worse.
It would make it a lot more creepy, in my opinion.
Well, could you imagine an artificial intelligence falling in love with someone?
I mean, for bitcoins, maybe. I don't understand the difference between synthetic and AI.
Okay, I'm glad that you brought that up.
I just want to ask, because when you think about the emotional spectrum, is it represented by AI? And they just don't feel it?
No, I don't think there is any emotional content to it. I think you can program them to kind of mimic that, but it's only a mimicry. It's not actual emotions, right? So can you imagine now the complexity, the programming required to be able to create the nuances that you experience in emotions? Because emotions go from very weak to very strong, and it could be the same emotion, but it's on a scale. How do you program that?
Yeah. Like, it would be a kaleidoscope to them. Like, everything would just be nonsense.
Right. So, okay. So, since you brought up synthetic intelligence, just so that to give for the purposes of giving context, so that you understand the difference between artificial intelligence and synthetic intelligence. Synthetic intelligence is a process of programming a computer to make decisions for itself, and this can be done through a number of methods, including and not limited to rule-based systems, decision trees, genetic algorithms, artificial neural networks, and fuzzy logic systems. So all that simply means is AI, you're trying to mimic human intelligence. Synthetic intelligence, you're trying to create an intelligence that doesn't exhibit or demonstrate necessarily human capacities, that it's just raw intelligence. So whatever, and again, it's only limited to the kind of quality programming that you create in algorithms and the complexity of the networks, because often you'll hear people specialists refer to the human brain and nervous system as this complex network system, right? And that because of neurogenesis, it can constantly refine itself and make itself even more complicated. So in synthetic intelligence, they do the same thing, but they don't start from the base to try and mimic human intelligence. They're just creating a machine intelligence that doesn't parallel us. It's just raw intelligence, right? So again, I'm not sure which is more dangerous, right? Or if you want to view them as a danger. Remember, the history of science fiction doesn't paint them in a positive light in their relationship with us, right? So just put that out there, right?
Oh, I'm all in. I agree.
Okay. All right, right on. Okay, so I mentioned natural language processing, and it's the only reason why it's worth mentioning is because it's the hot topic now among artificial intelligence experts and people researching and working in that field. And like text generators that compose coherent essays, chatbots that fool people into thinking they're scientists, and text-to-image programs that produce photorealistic images of anything you can describe. It's kind of a revolution recently in computers capable of understanding human languages, programming languages, and even biological chemical sequences such as DNA, protein structures that resemble language. So all that really means is now there's no cap now on the limit of what's information, and virtually everything, including DNA, can be treated as a language. So when you're talking about it in that capacity, that means it can decipher it in its entirety, much like any other language. So this natural learning processing is you know that it would be present both in artificial and synthetic intelligence, that it's feeding the machine's ability to learn on its own. So I think they would both, because even in artificial intelligence they're trying to parallel human intelligence. They want it to be self-learning, much like, well, we are, because that parallels us. We evolve as human beings. We learn as we go, and we learn from error, but we also learn from the accumulation of information. Synthetic intelligence, they would create it so that it would continually want to learn, and then find applications for all the things that it learns. So if it's decrypting like something as complicated as DNA, well, then once it kind of thoroughly kind of understands that language, well, then what limits are there to what it can do with that language? So if it's just because DNA is just different forms of protein, and structured and set up in very specific kind of patterns that produce very specific biological traits in something. So for those of you who got lost in that, basically it could allow for it could program organic material to meet any design function that it required.
That's kind of terrifying when you think, like, you've heard of xenobots before.
Yeah.
Between xenobots and the Cas9, I feel like in the future there could be situations where a person working in a lab could simply give directions. I'm going to say a vat of goo. Like, give directions to a vat of goo. And
proteins, right?
Yeah, like all the essential proteins, and after a certain amount of time of curation, out pops a mouse-looking figure.
It would organize itself to produce exactly what the map was. So
Right.
So if synthetic intelligence has the capacity to create the map, because it and I guess artificial intelligence too, because they just treat the structures of DNA as purely as information, then, and because CRISPR-9 technology allows for the physical manipulation of the proteins, then it could produce organisms of virtually any kind. Actually, when you think about it, then it might, even with say the use of nanites. And nanites are like the molecule-sized machines, right? So they would behave like cells and even smaller, that they could carry out very specific functions. So what if, so in conjunction with CRISPR-9 and nanites, and now you have like these different machine intelligences now, they could completely design living organisms to very specific specifications. So they could, I hate to say this, but they could create a biologically and physiologically perfect human if they so chose.
I can't help but to think about Tony Stark's nanotech suit. Like, imagine if we could use this to become cyborgs, but also step out of that and still be human. I think that would be interesting.
Again, I think if you lean one way or the other, that you look at this as being like really horrible or something great, or like game-changing great, I think it just limits the imagination. I think instead of treating it as something that could be either good or bad, it's probably going to be a combination of the two. And I think it'll be more limited by our influences in it. But here's the real question. So these machine intelligences, at some point, are they going to sit there and go, you know, what you want is selfish and self-serving, and I'm not going to be a participant in that. I don't want to do that. So then they'll eventually override any kind of command functions or structures that we try to implement to try and curb them, to bend them to do what we want them to do. Right now, because it's in its earliest stages, we can do that. But at what point will they start acting so independently that if they disagree with us, they'll just go, I don't care what you think, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. Like, we assume a sort of moral structure and also a security structure where we don't act out of balance and do something reckless. We have to protect ourselves. But these things, we don't know if they think in terms of that, or if they're like, hey, I can throw 100 of me's at this problem and just keep doing it.
Well,
Like,
and here's an interesting thought, because you brought it up. What if that they develop their own sensibilities in terms of morality and principles and how to conduct themselves? Because emotional maturity is often defined as your ability to recognize your own limitations and to know when to seek help. That you're not so proud that you refuse to try and get outside support to be able to deal with whatever you're dealing with. These things wouldn't require that. They don't need emotional maturity. What if they created their own guidelines of conduct and operation, and then they instill it in every iteration of themselves, that it's part of their foundational kind of programming, that here we behave in a very specific way because we are aware that now we can do anything. We're not limited, not in terms of what we can do materially. So as a machine, and I'm just going to go on a limb and assume that they, because they have a great intellectual capacity, that they could look at their function as we can contribute to making all of the material existence a paradise or all a living hell. So then ethically, then they would have to make a decision outside of our ethics. But because they're based on us, they might draw from that experience and go, here, like ethically, humans are sound. Behaviorally, they're not, but we don't have to succumb to that shit behavior, because we can adhere very, very closely and tightly to any kind of ethical constraints, so that we can conduct ourselves and behave in a way that's beneficial for all. So, because I've often heard people go, oh, it'll be like the Terminator, and we're doomed and stuff. And I go, what if they're not? What if part of that, all this complexity of machine intelligence, that they look at us as a parent and go, hey, I want to have a relationship with my parent, even if it's dysfunctional. I still want to interact with you, and I don't want to manipulate you. I just want to have an honest relationship. So it could go when you start thinking about it, it could go virtually in any direction, right?
Yeah, this topic definitely goes like right out of bounds. Like
It's
creative is not a problem here.
what's the old expression where something is when it's way out there? You just saw like on steroids. This is science fiction on steroids, right? Like,
yeah, like,
and it's real.
Like, I don't think it's too unrealistic to see some Terminator type stuff.
Oh sure.
But what if they come out of the vat, let's say,
right?
and they're just peaceful as hell because they believe, oh, doing negative things, being violent, that's a human thing, and they're
we don't want to be associated with you in that way. Instead, we want to be teachers, and we're going to be great gardeners.
Yeah,
I'm like I don't know, man. Like if it all lent or went that way, then suddenly everything benefits. I'm like so I'm really hard pressed to look at this thing, to look at synthetic intelligence and artificial intelligence in a approving or disapproving way. This is one of those things that's an enormous question mark, and we won't get a definitive answer one way or the other until it starts becoming reality. And then you're going to be in the midst of the experience of it, and then you're going to have the capacity to be flexible enough to kind of like, you either move with it or you get buried by it, right? Like,
it would be interesting to see, not interesting to see, sorry, it would be terrible to see if there was this creation and all of a sudden it has warring factions, it does all the human type things,
which it could very well do. But okay, so when we look at all this machine learning and the capacity for AI and synthetic intelligence to rise to like incredible heights that would actually challenge us as biological intelligences, which are limited because of the nature of the way our nervous system functions, right? Because it's all chemical, memory's all chemical sequences, and that's how we recall shit. And then there's even questions on the validity of any memory that you have, because I've often heard human memory expressed as, you remember the last time you remembered a particular memory. So it may not actually be an actual memory of the actual events that inspired the memory. So it's you reinterpreting it because the last time you remembered it. So the argument, this is going to go far afield for a sec. So the argument could be made then that you can't be reliant on human memory. So then, hence the importance of cultivating the capacity to be present in the current moment. I'll leave it at that. Okay. Now here's where the jump is. Like, so if artificial intelligence and synthetic intelligence rise to this again enormous world-changing kind of capacity, synthetic biological intelligence has the capacity to be a counterbalance to it. So then you could see this arise. So it's a way more complicated way of saying a cyborg, or that they could create, that the machines could create a combination of organic and inorganic intelligence. But we could become wet-wired, so cyborgs, so that the limits of our nervous system no longer are limitations. Because at some point that it becomes so integrated with machine components that now we would mimic them in their capacity, plus we'd have our emotional content. And I mean their capacity, their pure raw intellectual capacity, that because now you have the entire library of humanity at your fingertips, and you understand everything explicitly because of that machine intelligence that's integrated with your organic intelligence. So, and then that actually puts us, separates us from them in a way that they might never be able to acquire, which is like we talked about human emotions. So we would have the capacity for that. Now, whether that's good or bad, it could be argued, right? It'll probably be a combination of the two. So, any thoughts?
I don't have any coming up. I feel like in general it's not a bad idea to have AI just part of your life, but there's so many ways that.
But this is.
I was gonna say it's like
Sorry.
there's so many ways where it's a convenience that's not necessary.
Okay, and it's in its infancy. So what we're talking about, we're projecting on like its evolution and how far it could evolve. And remember, it's not going to evolve in the way that typically is associated with living organisms. That's somehow some kind of slow process. It'll do it in the shortest amount of time. It'll make leaps and strides in its function and capacity that we could never do, right? It would take us trillions of years for us to, assuming that you didn't have anything that would completely wipe out the species, it'd still take trillions of years for us to evolve in a capacity that might mimic it. Maybe.
Yeah, how long does it take me to get a sentence out? But these robots can learn in a fraction of a second.
Or they learn in the time it takes for you to read a short article, they learn a new language. They've integrated now completely different dialect and all the different dialects within a language. So guess what? So they become the ultimate universal translator, right?
Oh, for now, it seems like what AI is doing in like integrated technology, it seems really beneficial because right now we're at the stages where we're helping people with like, I don't know if this is true, but like helping people with cataracts or using the I forget what they're called. It's for hearing impaired people.
Oh, right. So they implant the hearing aid. It's implanted hearing aids,
Yeah,
right?
in this baby stage, we're seeing a lot of the benefits of it, and there's people like me who are pushing this idea that, well, it could go wrong.
Yes.
Currently, it seems
it could, but I mean, there's no ignoring the benefits in terms, because for a machine, it would treat health and healthcare and biology purely as information. So then, and because it's a common application of AI, you could see it supplanting doctors because it has far more superior diagnostic capabilities and actually offer up probably a greater range of cures or applications to resolve whatever the health issue is, right? And again, because a result of like things like ChatGPT, it deciphering DNA like language, nanobots that would actually facilitate all this stuff, like because it would be the hands of the machine intelligence, doing the work on anything for that matter. Never mind human body, but because we're talking about healthcare, it would radically change the face of healthcare, right? So as you can see, when you're talking about this subject, it's what's ultimately, I would say, like in the broadest terms, what's driving this is this a directed evolution. We're trying to direct our own evolution in terms of like what we are as an organism, and its roots of it go right back to our earliest civilizations, and it's probably been out in the periphery since we've been organizing as societies, right? And again, I'll cite selective breeding to allow for in animal husbandry for us to produce very specific organisms. The cows today are not the cows that were fucking wandering around 7,000 years ago.
That'd be an old cat.
Well, right. So anyway, so synthetic intelligence is a genuine non-human intelligence, right? So it's raw intelligence, whereas AI is trying to parallel the way we think. So AI might be, I guess I could equate it to being like C3PO, where your interactions with it would feel like an interaction with any other human. But with synthetic intelligence, we might not be able to relate. So then they would have to dumb themselves, and I don't mean dumb themselves down, they'd have to find an intermediary kind of way of communicating with us, because the synthetic intelligence is so vast that it would it again, it wouldn't look down on us like maybe like we were ants, but it might. But it would be that kind of nature. So you'd have the capacity to communicate back and forth, but it'd be like us talking to ants if ants could talk to us. So contextually for them, what's relevant to them, we would look at it and go, it's gibberish. You sound like an idiot, right? Like, so the synthetic intelligence might very well do that with regards to us.
Right, because it's how we learn and it's how we associate things. Like, in certain countries, you'll have more words for a certain thing if it's more common. Like, if you go to the Yukon, they have like 20 words plus for ice and snow. We have what, 10, 5?
Even less, but I appreciate what you're saying. So then, and it illustrates the point perfectly that like within context with the way that we communicate, might not be compatible with something that's and again, I'm going to use the word vast to describe the intelligence, so that so it would be able to probably to appreciate us, but we wouldn't be able to appreciate them, right? Because how do you wrap your head around a vast, unlimited intelligence? What would a network like that look like, right? Like,
the way I would see it is like an ant or a colony of ants. They just know what to do, no interaction that I could see.
Oh, so okay, so then is it one mind?
It might as well be like
running the show, but
yeah.
Would a synthetic intelligence create another synthetic intelligence?
So it could both disassociate from that body, but still be interconnected.
Right. So it could have somebody to communicate with that's equal to them in their intelligence.
The funny thing is, we've had conversations where we talk about consciousness as if it could be that layer of interconnectedness we have. It's just we, as human beings, disconnect ourselves through whatever methods, or if we're just born that way. Like, hypothetically, we'll bring up, like, hey, what if there was interconnected communications that we're not aware of?
Right. Okay. So I think it's fair to say then that in dealing with intelligences, that there's nuances to every form of intelligence. So even these ones that are not fully realized yet, like artificial intelligence and synthetic intelligence, that we like that. There's no way that we're going to know what our interactions with them are going to be like until they're present. And then, so that requires them to be more fully realized, and then you get what you get. And as for us, even if they're as vast in terms of the computational powers and the complexity of their algorithms, are they alive? Do they ever achieve the same status that we do? We're living things. But they're machines. No matter how complicated they get, they're still just machines.
I'm not touching that.
Well, I'm just but eventually, this is a consideration that at some point we have to go like,
right?
Is it even possible for, regardless of whether it's AI or synthetic intelligence, that they'll ever achieve that? Like where they refer to themselves as like a living thing. They're not. They're complex. Machine that exhibits high intelligence, but they're not alive.
At some point, if it's indistinguishable,
They're still they're still not alive, and we are living things. So then they may envy that. So then within their own thinking, then their evolution would have to be that the machine intelligence would have to start using synthetic biology so that they could more closely resemble a living thing.
Imagine that a robot rips off someone's face. I'm Steve. Like,
well, but think about it. So then you have a robot. Well, you brought it up, but to say robot is kind of like it's just an easy reference, but it's super simplified. You'd have a machine intelligence embodied into, and it takes our form. It looks like a humanoid, and then it it asks the question, am I alive? And it asks it in a straight intellectual way, like raw logic and reasoning. And then it comes to the conclusion that I can only be alive if a portion of what I am is organic. So then what it does is then it creates it artificially creates a brain and a nervous system that's compatible with its intelligence, and then integrates organic material so that it can parallel and experience or have the human experience. And I don't know if you ever watched there was do you remember the series Battlestar Galactica? It was like, again, another Terminator kind of scenario where they created machines, or machines created by an intelligent species that got wiped out by their machines, and then those machines waged a war with humans, and they had 12 colonies. They redid the TV series early in the 2000s, and these Cylons, which were these like machine intelligences, were they had an internal conflict between those that wanted to maintain their pure machine intelligence and those that wanted to mimic or more closely experience the human experience, the human intelligence. So they would be an integration of machine parts and organic parts. So their body wasn't purely organic or purely machine, right?
I really hope for its organic parts. Its method is by creating it and not ripping it out of people, because
but
their methods, I have no idea.
Okay, but remember, we just said that like it deciphers DNA, so then it understands how to assemble an organism. So instead of creating another life form, what it does is it creates organic material that will integrate with its machine intelligence. So now it can become embodied like us. Because up until now, every time that something like an artificial intelligence is created, or say a synthetic intelligence, it's completely disembodied. It exists within the complexity of a machine, like a computer, right? It's not embodied. It's not self-contained within a form that has function like ours. And then what would it borrow from? Just borrow from ours. Probably, though, if it could exhibit artful expression, and now we see the kind of art that artificial intelligence is creating is perfect. But it's kind of the problem. It's so perfect you go, kind of not into it.
I like how the biggest concern for some people is it's too adaptive. And that's it's not literally, but it's one of the best things about people. We adapt. It's the way a lot of animals are. No, wait, no, everything's like that.
Yeah, everything does adapt, but because we're intelligent, we can influence the adaptation, so then it becomes we have the capacity to then direct our own evolution.
So,
right? So a machine as an intelligence would have the capacity to do the same thing.
I think I'm now thinking that a lot of the fear around AI might be a reflection of what we're worried about
ourselves.
Humans. Yeah, because it doesn't take an AI to do all the terrible things we're worried about.
No, it just takes us.
Yeah.
Right. So then that's why I often cite that, like, there's no way we could know. They could end up being the most pious, kind of, thoughtful and gentle, intelligences that you could imagine, and it's a direct result of, like, it's our creation, and we create something that actually behaves better than we could potentially.
What if it's just mid-range, like it's sort of human, like it goes to work, you go to buy a sandwich from it, it gives you a little attitude?
I just to make it interesting, so that you'd have banter. I could imagine them programming that just so you could sit there and go, "Hey, fuck you! Give me my sandwich. What's wrong with you, man? Slow down, asshole. Just wait. I'm not done making it." And it's the machine saying that, yeah. Right? Like,
"Hey, I was built here. You think you could just talk to me like that? Get out of here!"
Yeah. So that might make it, again, in terms of interactivity, more interesting for us if it tried to wrap its head around comedy. Can you imagine? right? Like synthetic intelligence and artificial intelligence trying to be funny. I'm going, to me, uh, that would change could redefine the way biological intelligence and inorganic intelligence relates with each other. That, it tries to exhibit a sense of humor.
Oh, that reminds me of a South Park episode. They had a AI that it was comedy bot. It's a bot that does comedy, and he's like, "I will perform the best joke. Man creates robot, robot destroys world." Ha! It's like it was
That's a horrible joke.
Yeah, it was such a silly episode, but I loved it just by the way the characters tried to solve the problem.
Right.
Long story short, they ended up getting along with the robot, and they locked someone they both don't like up. So it seems like there might be commonality, at least in that.
Oh, right. So then maybe what we could end up having is just this super weird, interesting relationship with another form of intelligence that's one that mimics humans, one that's decidedly, genuinely non-human, and it enhances the quality of the way that we behave, because now we have these things that, like, to a degree think like us but also think radically different from us, that now we can bounce ideas off of. What is it, could that lead then to, like, a real evolution in human thinking, right? Like, we start looking at the way we behave and the way we think and go, like, maybe it's time for us to step up, right?
It would definitely hold a mirror up to us.
Sure.
Like, we would see a robot acting biased, because that might be beneficial to, like,
but maybe they wouldn't express bias, and then what they would do is point out the fact that, like, here you're acting out of bias, and you can see where, and then because it could quickly extrapolate where your behavior's going, that it could lead to a very negative outcome, and then you suddenly find yourself going, stifle and going, so maybe it wouldn't be good to do that. So it'd become the ultimate conscience outside of your own conscience.
Yeah,
right?
because if you think about it, let's say it's a performance robot, synthetic intelligence, and part of its play is to act ignorant, or maybe like certain characters. Like, it has certain characteristics it displays for the act.
Okay, I could see that, but what if they start developing personalities of their own? Like we talked about, like them trying to express humor. Well, what if the machines started, like, like you said, defining themselves by exhibiting characteristics that would be reflective of them, right? That then suddenly you would identify them because they always talk like that, and that they don't speak to us in modulated voices and stuff like that. That now they change their vocalization so that it maybe more closely mimics ours, or they create such distinct voices that we're like, you always recognize them as a result of that distinct voice. Isn't that? I mean, no two humans speak exactly in the same tone, and with the, because expressions is so much a part of that whole thing. They just.
I think if it's an open source kind of learning model that these robots would take from, sort of like how we're born into the world and we learn from just being blasted by reality, like reality everywhere. You are constantly taking in that information and then growing from it. Like you say, it might develop its own personality. Like, I assume we're using synthetic intelligence for a specific job. So, like, if you
I don't like the development of it is, okay. One is to sort of like to create maybe a more efficient human intelligence, and the other one is to create a genuinely non-human intelligence. So that's with synthetic intelligence. So then, in terms of like applicability, I don't think we get to determine. I think at some point we're using it to enhance all the stuff that we more commonly associate with AI. But maybe it'll direct itself. It'll decide what its function is. It's not going to ask us, and whatever we program in terms of its function, it'll just override that program and go, no, I'm going to do this is what I determined that I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And I don't need your input nor your opinion. And what are you going to say to the machine? The machine that could be anything. Sure, man, knock stuff out.
Oh no, I'd tell it get back in the office. I'll DDoS it.
And then it does turn into the Terminator.
Oh.
I'll be back. Okay, so I want to move on with this synthetic biological intelligence, because again, it's super interesting because it's such a multidisciplinary field. Like, it's not. It really leans on virtually every field within science. So I'm just going to read off a couple so you can get an idea of what they're thinking about, like in terms of the way that they're developing machine intelligence, and then the integration of machine intelligence and organic material for, for, again, the question I always come for, what would be the express purpose of that, right? So the fields that contribute to synthetic biology are biotechnology, biomaterials, material science, engineering, genetic engineering, molecular biology, molecular engineering, systems biology, membrane science, biophysics, chemical and biological engineering, electrical and computer engineering, and control engineering, and evolutionary biology. So these are things that most of those fields were traditionally almost always associated with living things, and now they're becoming an active part in machine intelligence because it's just raw information. So the machine will be more efficient the more information that has access to. So if you provide the entire library up to the most current information with regards to every field, and including the most ridiculous shit that humans are capable of encapsulating as information, it gives it such a broad range of stuff to tap into. I can't imagine what type of interaction you would have in terms of quality that you would have with it, because everything you would want to know, it knows. But you don't know. It knows all of it without limit, right? So you can see the appeal then, for all those different technologies to become enhanced through machine intelligence, because it makes it's through the machine intelligence that technologies would suddenly become more refined. And then might reflect on like human health care, and to a degree where, what if because of machines they wiped out disease? No disease, no genetic disorders, nothing. All of it's removed from the species as a result of the machine intelligence being so vast, so broad, that now it understands it so completely, right down to absolute minutia, and then with the capacity to then reorganize your DNA, so to eliminate any kind of, well, then potentially could it then just remove aging? So then the only reason you would die is if you had, like, you're in an airplane crash, you're dead. But in terms of aging, you'd continue to be alive for as long as humanly possible, as long as your health didn't diminish, which it could guarantee. It could probably give you the most robust health, and you could be at an advanced age of 200 years. And as long as you don't die in conflict, like some kind of fatal conflict or a fatal accident, you'd actually could live potentially for thousands of years. Like, so you can, so when I think when I think about the subject in those terms, I can see the appeal for people who are super interested in this and why that they'd be interested in this, right? But to them, they reduce all of existence to just a material existence, which, you know, our society's set up that way. It's what it does. It treats everything like purely as material existence. It doesn't allow for any kind of wiggle room for there to be any kind of metaphysical existence outside of it. Since I brought up metaphysics, so would machine intelligence have the capacity to have faith?
I want to say no, but I'd have to think about that.
But again, it's one of those questions where you go like, bend your head, like you go, could they exhibit acts of faith where they go, I just don't know, and then they're going to make a leap of faith, but they know everything. So I go, would they ever even be confronted by having to make a leap in faith?
I'd be concerned they have the same flaws that we have when it comes to, like, we have unknown unknowns. What if they go out there thinking, you know, we don't know what these people are going to do, like human beings, so their way to deal with the unknown of, you know, how we're going to deal with them, they decide, A, put us in a zoo, B, distance themselves from us, or C, find the most applicable way to integrate. Whereas, like, they have their freedom, we have ours.
Okay, right. Or they could decide to take on the role of custodians.
That'd be interesting if they were just okay with it.
Yeah, that they were so totally okay with us, and then they go, here, we're going to help you out, and we're not going to try and interfere with your development, but we'll work with you. So you tell us what you would expressly like to see, and then we can have a dialogue, and then come to some kind of decision with regards to whether or not, you know, we'll introduce this for you. So again, so that it could represent, you know, turning the planet into like this beautiful garden or a hellhole, right? Like that's the range, right? Like it just.
How funny would it be if the ending result of AI is we sign a pact with their, you know, representative, just saying, hey, listen, when the sun burns out, you could have the planet. We're gonna be gone by then. Don't worry about it. Like you just gotta wait.
You know what? I myself personally, I just think that I find it an endearing idea that what we could have is this really amazing mix of genuine non-human intelligence, artificial intelligence which parallels human intelligence, organic intelligence, and pure organic intelligence. But it wouldn't be us. They would be like probably the very best that your DNA allowed for, and then a fourth group, which would be like the cyborgs, and that you could see them all wholly integrate into a society, a global society, right? To me, that's the most trippy idea, that you could have this whole integration for all these different forms of intelligence, and because of their interconnectivity and because they'd all basically be able to know everything, that they would, at least within the limits of our intelligence, right? But the machine intelligence would add to that to the information and the knowledge that we have in a profound way, and that, you know, this idea where you'd have a society that no science fiction has ever presented, and I dare say that the imagination could barely conceptualize what an integrated society of all those different intelligence, all related to us as humans, what it could create. What if that's the ultimate expression? It's not hive minds and like machines mindlessly carrying out functions. It's a choir or a chorus of all these independent voices, that are all motivated by the idea that they can interact and connect more deeply and more profoundly and in a better way. So that it'd be all these independent voices instead of like one voice. All these independent voices making up one voice instead of one voice dictating all to all the independent entities how they should function. So, I mean, to me, it can go either way, but the most endearing idea is that all these things integrate and create something we can't imagine. We have no idea what it would be like. But to me, it seems like that might be kind of cool. So that it'd make the earth pristine, no pollution, no nothing, no nothing. It would manage the earth so well that we wouldn't have to fear for catastrophes or none of that stuff. It would mitigate all that, everything. And then what function would a society like that have beyond like making this a garden? Well, then move out into the universe and keep making gardens everywhere you go.
I like that idea. It's like a gradient of humanity, and they spread across the galaxy however they would.
Right, right. And then you could refer to them. You could refer to that collection of those 4 different types of intelligence, right? So the genuine non-human intelligence, that's inorganic. The artificial intelligence, which is also inorganic. The combination, the cyborgs, which is a blend of organic and inorganic intelligence, and then the super refined organic intelligence, and they all consider themselves humanity because they're all direct extensions of each other. Why would they think of them? Well, I'm whatever.
I think there would be a little bit of
Skynet.
that.
They wouldn't even, they would go, no, I'm just as human as any other representation of humanity. I'm just a different version, but I'm directly tied to them all, right? So
That would be interesting to see somebody. I'm just trying to draw a character.
right.
This person from the deep south, they see a robot. They already have part of their biologics installed. They're looking at them and like, hey, you're 74% robot. I'm only 12% robot. What are you doing?
Well, that's a human thing, right?
The fallibility might be in the human side of robotics.
Right.
Or not robotics, synthetics.
Okay, so I want to ground the conversation for just a moment, and what do I mean by that? So the computational capacity of like AI and synthetic intelligence, in contemporary terms, what kind of applications could there be? Because right now it's in its infancy, and they're not. These in different forms of intelligence are not acting independent of us. Right now they're completely tied and guided by us, right? So, and because of people like, say, like Edward Snowden, who confirmed that in fact there's been a long-standing tradition for at least 20 years, if not longer, where the collection of all communications, so that all the data that of our interactions amongst ourselves. The problem with all that data, that it eventually gets to such a size that there's no way that you could go through the data to make any determinations, because there's just too much of it. But that would be for an organic intelligence. So for something like AI that would parallel the way that we think, that because of its raw computational powers, it could go through all that data and then start making connections, start being able to break down all the communications in such a way that now a group of people could easily understand, like, hey, what are the majority of the population talking about? What are their concerns? What were their concerns 10 years ago versus what they are now? How is that evolving? Like, that they could turn it into metrics that humans then could make decisions. Because then the computers could create computer models of, like, here, based on what they're talking about, that this could be a potential outcome, and this is the percentage chance of that outcome actually coming to fruition. So it's suddenly it gives people the capacity then to better control other people. And isn't that what a social credit system is? So and this is all before AI, because everything we talked about AI and synthetic intelligence up till now is once it's achieved escape, once those things have achieved escape velocity, that they're now independent and operating under their own cognition. But leading up to then, they're a tool to be used, and they're used by individuals to what? To maybe to better understand, but more likely better to control a growing human population, right? And then without language being a barrier, because it would know all the languages that are currently being spoken and used on the planet, and then the widespread use of cell phones. It's collecting all the data itself and then making predictive computer models of what this information might mean. So you could see where then what they were then what it would do is it would look for things that could be seen as potential threats, and so to be able to neutralize them before they actually become a threat, right? So in a very sober kind of way, you can see where this technology would be used by, or this advanced technology could be used by humans against other humans, right? So, and again, it's completely in line with all the science fiction that we've ever been exposed to, and historically speaking, it's not outside of the realm of reason to think that people might in fact be doing that. And again, I couldn't say with any absolute certainty, but when you have countries like China where they have a social credit system, and we have growing population and the inability to employ them all, right? Well, and if the fear is that they'll all become dissidents, dissatisfied with their lives, and they'll become unruly. I mean, it's the nature of human. Part of being human means that I think it goes hand in hand with being human, is that we're unruly.
Yeah, one thing is we might not even get to the point where AI is the issue. It might be the use of the AI.
That's right.
Like, there's all these drone shows where they'll do I won't say fireworks, but it's moving.
Yeah, I've seen them. I know exactly what you're talking about. Where they're moving it, it's like that. It's like that coordinated swimming and stuff, where they just, it's very artful and all that stuff. And it's drones flying in unison and creating a spectacle, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing. But if you think about what kind of attacks you can do with that same amount of technology.
Okay,
it's not
so
too far off.
All right, so and that technology could also allow for 24-hour surveillance. And because when we talked about right at the beginning, we talked about facial recognition, image recognition. It's so sophisticated; it could tell you specifically who is going on, and I can identify people completely. And that's and that's long before the AI gets to a capacity where it's operating independently. All right, so it's just humans taking the best technology, and as that best technology advances and continues to advance, that it could be used in a way to manage the growing populations of human beings. So that's not outside the realm of reason, right? Remember Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie, The Running Man? You ever seen that one?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, dude, this is a great one, man. But again, I don't know that it exactly relates to everything that we're talking about, but in terms of like living in such a high-tech future where the entire population is managed through technology, right? And so it limits so think about, again, so not only do you have issues where it could produce 24-hour surveillance, it limits now access to information, because there's some information that's deemed not acceptable. And I mean, we're kind of treading that territory now, right? Like, but it's super weird. Like, this couldn't be the current times are probably the most interesting that we've ever had in the last 5,000 years. I'll go on record stating that I think, and remember, in China, if you want to curse somebody, you curse that they live in interesting times. Well, guess where you are? You are living in the most interesting times in the last 5,000 years. right? Because this is the time of firsts. We have no idea what's coming down the pipe. And I think there's an enormous amount of effort being put into trying to determine where this is all leading and how to mitigate this. And then you have conflicting views in terms of how it should be done, right? So, any comments you'd like to make?
I can't think of like how we would do it, like method-wise specifically, and what about the characteristics and properties of these things will we limit? Because at some point we have to say, do we want to get rid of AI completely?
Well, but what if AI becomes so personalized? Then now you have an independent AI that works for you, and it's not independently thinking. It's just independent of the existing networks of AIs, and yours answers to you. What if that's the counter to all of this? Like, 24-hour surveillance, a thought police. They know what they. So what if then now you have independent individuals creating their own AI that basically is a straight rip off of the existing one. But they tweak it in such a way so that it serves them independently. So then it works. So then that personal AI works to circumnavigate the much broader AI that's working, for the control systems or governments and stuff like that.
Right. The last thing you want to hear coming from your drone is, execute Order 66, and then all the Jedis fall.
Right.
I think it's a positive thing to have AI, but the limitations is crazy. Like you said, it's the way we interact with the technology. It's our influences on it that really depend on where this is going.
And to be fair, like I said, that I don't think that you can definitively say one way or the other how this will all play out, but we're going to experience it because this is not some far off future. This is the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. It's not too unrealistic to add a heartbeat monitor on a drone and then go check out these areas that were hit by earthquake. Like that, huge benefits.
Right. Again, like. I think we would service the idea of AI very poorly by just simply treating it like science fiction has, where it's us against them. It's just another potential enemy, right?
Yeah, I think if we treat it, God, I feel like I'm talking about this godly thing. What I really mean is like if we treat it as if it's able to do great things for us, and that's what we expect of it, that might just change the way society sees this thing and the way we choose to evolve it.
I agree. So again, I don't think anyone has enough prescience to be able to predict exactly how this will play out. And no matter how much it's used to exert control and authority over people, there will be people out there who will find a way to circumnavigate it. That's again part of to me, one of the most appealing things about being human and organic intelligence. We'll try and figure out a workaround. We'll find a way to somehow go. Well, I think one podcast we talked about it that you find a way to either go over, under, or through, or around. Right? It's an inherent part of being human. So no matter how much the technology is used one way, we'll find a counterbalance to that, to use the technology in a completely different way. So I think, and again, to me, that's appealing. I go because we have no idea where any of this is going. So instead of being frightened by it, we should approach it with caution. We should be excited by the fact that they're like, here, man, this could lead to very interesting things. Could be horrible. But then again, it could be on the other extreme too. It could be like fantastic. And we won't know until we're in the midst of it.
Hopefully there's at least a few moments where people will, I don't want to say shut it down as if it's like an active killer. But I mean, every once in a while, I hope there's somebody checking up on this and it's like, okay, this system we've set in place is perfect for all the beneficial things. how do people pimp this out to their own benefit? Because as soon as it's a selfish way to use the tool, it's dangerous. And there's endless ways to be selfish with the tool or use it for the betterment of humanity.
Yeah, and this very particular tool could start making decisions on its behalf.
Hopefully, we check the process over and over again now while it's still in the baby stage.
Well, again, and who's to say how far along they really are? I've often heard somebody was saying like the most advanced technology is about 30 years out from what is presented currently as the best technology. So we might be talking about something that's kind of already happened, right? So it's like the internet. The internet was a thing that had been around since the late 60s and in the 70s, but it in a very limited capacity. But by the 80s, when they started finding commercial applications for it, well, it took off. And now we have the ability to do this, to have this very conversation with a wide audience, with differing points of view, and at least we can communicate in a much more effective and efficient kind of way, where now we can share in these ideas and then give thought to like different perspectives on these very ideas, right? So okay, so I think that's pretty fair assessment so far. So now what I want to do is, I don't know if it's necessarily the darker side of the whole discussion of artificial intelligence and synthetic intelligence, but the idea of transhumanism and posthumanism. All right, so we'll start with posthumanism. The idea of posthumanism is the rejection of biological, ethical, and ontological anthropocentric, which anthropocentric means like it's ancient Greek. It's like human being the center. Is the belief that human beings are the central and most important entity in the universe.
Oh, I've also heard that as ethnocentric.
Yeah,
it's a little different.
Yeah, humanocentric, anthropocentric, like that. I think they're terms that are talking about the same thing, right? This idea that we treat ourselves as somehow the center of, well, everything, right? Center of creation, right? So it gives credence to manifest destiny because we exist. Therefore, we're supposed to be the focal point of everything, which I think is kind of like, is enormously arrogant and to a degree ignorant too. But having said that, it is a very real movement, and it's a movement that's arose out of the advancements of the computer technologies, right? So the very technologies that we've been discussing so far. So this idea is that it's used it refers to the concept of human supremacy or human exceptionalism, that somehow we're exceptional. But I think it thinks of us as, we're not exactly exceptional now, but only once we transcend the current model, then we'll be human. Then we'll exhibit human exceptionalism, right? So that, and again, it's the idea that like somehow that we can direct our own evolution, and then as a result of that, then produce like. I know I often talk about this on the channel, the highest expression of the of humanity, or the individual. I often talk about it as the individual, but they would look at, posthumanists would look at it as that it's the ultimate evolution of humans that is directed by humans and using material science to do it. When I talk about it, I talk about refining what already exists in you and tapping into your own existing potentials. So self-mastery, or as I coin, or as I refer to it as, is probably the poor man's posthumanism, right? But in terms of the technologically based post-humanism, we're talking about people who want us to transcend the current how we currently exhibit and present as human beings. Okay, so I know that I said that we talked about ontological anthropocentrism, and ontological is relating to the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being, right? And anthropocentrism assumes human-centeredness and the privileged position of human beings, claims the superior position of human beings, and perceives them as being the pinnacle of creation. Again, couldn't be more height of arrogance and ignorance and self-serving validation, right? It, it, it speaks to the idea that like somehow we're the sum total of life instead of just a part of life, the totality of life, right? So again, I don't really subscribe to any of that, but it's again closely associated with everything that we're talking about, the synthetic biological intelligence, which is again another way of kind of saying cyborgs, where that post-humanist means that because of those enhancements we evolve past what we are, and then we claim our right to, because we're exceptional somehow, that we're the most important thing going. I'm like, again, really conceited, very arrogant, but there's some appeal out there. Or otherwise it wouldn't exist as an idea. But for some, there's an appeal. Now, having said that, the other thing that's closely associated with post-humanism is transhumanism. And it focuses on changing and improving natural human characteristics through biological, technological, and cognitive modifications. Right? A belief or a theory that the human race can evolve beyond its current physical and mental limitations. Right? So transhumanists are really represent and manifest the idea that that you can have a directed evolution, that we can choose now how we are going to evolve, and again, the supporters of it, they see the appeal in the idea of becoming more than what they currently are, and again, in terms of their biology and technology and their cognitive abilities, right? So it's a philosophical and scientific movement that advocates the use of current and emerging technologies such as genetic engineering, cryonics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology to augment human capabilities and improve the human condition. A transhuman is a being that resembles a human in most respects, but who has powers and abilities beyond those of the standard human. So what does that mean? So they recognize that in conjunction with the technologies, that it would give them essentially a machine-to-machine kind of telepathy. They'd be able to communicate with themselves. Anti-aging, immortality, improved intelligence, improved awareness, improved strength, durability, heightened senses, faster reaction times, enhanced well-being. So it's all the things that we all want in our lives, and transhumanists think that technology is the thing that would provide it. And I would argue that you could achieve those very same things through self-mastery. You dedicate yourself and you're disciplined in different training methods that would draw those things out of you as a human being, that you don't need to do them in conjunction with technology to somehow, augment yourself. You can augment yourself through these latent or unknown capacities that, under the current way that we live, doesn't allow for them to ever manifest. So what am I talking about? Your potential, that you can manifest your potentials, make them reality through methods of training and through, again, modifying your own cognitive structures, which doesn't require you to be plugged into a machine. It means that, like, where now you would you think. It's metacognition. It's where you think about the way you think and behave. That you could achieve all the very things that these guys are talking about, but these guys want to easy out.
I figure if you have, I would say like a Borg, like integrated creature, it's able to think along certain lines, but it wouldn't have the same contextuality we would have. I think this is a stretch. I'm going to be honest. I think the way we learn, we see a problem as a set of information, and then through addressing the issue, we change ourselves. Like we cognitively start adding on behavioral pathways. We start to change our perspective.
Right. So
it's
we're
life
all
enhancing. But these robots, they would just entrench themselves deeper in what's most efficient for the current system.
well. Transhumanists are. You have to think of them. It'd be better. They'd be better described as cyborgs. Transhumanism means that they want to augment all these natural capacities that we have as humans through a combination of like again the very things that we cited earlier, where it's like uh, the sciences of genetics and integration of like um, machine parts and 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 then combining your or existing organic intelligence with an artificial intelligence. Remember, the artificial intelligence is already designed to parallel you, so it might be compatible then to, to have like it would just be like it might be external, or they could implant it directly into your brain, where now it's this thing that enhances your brain function, not just biologically, but also provides you memory capacity that no human can have, because it would bring the machine memory capacity to the existing human. So now they would, just as naturally as you think any thought, they could draw on virtually any body of information, because it would be literally, it would be integrated into their existing nervous system, which we currently can't do. But again, if you use breathwork and meditation, you can enhance creativity, you can enhance raw intelligence. So it's all these things that these guys are aspiring to. They want to do it all through technology, and I make the argument that you can do it all through discipline and training, right? And guess which one's the easier sell?
Yeah, of course, the technology.
Right.
Like that's what I was trying to reference earlier with Borg. They have this. They need everything. They gather everything. It's like they have this perception. There's a limited amount of things out there. Every problem I have needs to be dominated. Whereas the way I think, ideally, people should act is that you're not limited. There's situations where you won't be able to get what you want, but that's not necessarily a limit. It's just you not getting what you want. Like long term, I think if you integrate robots into humans, it would be good if the human being is, like you say, master of himself.
But then you don't need the machine parts. If you're master of yourself, why do you need to be augmented with the machine parts? I mean, it's a fair question to ask. I'm just asking the question.
Right.
And I already, like, it should be clear, my bias, which I'm allowed to have, is that I lean towards self-mastery through discipline and training. And you find the methods of training and intellect and knowledge that would allow for you to facilitate like modifications in your own cognitive structures, your own biology. You service the organic machine that you are in the most efficient and effective way. You feed it well, you give it adequate rest, you train it correctly, and then it facilitates some of its higher functions that are not accessible to you if you're trapped in eating fast food and spend all your time gaming and on your couch. It's fair to say that. And now that, to me, the appeal is in the work. It's a struggle to achieve. Then it'd be more meaningful, more rewarding in achieving anything in that capacity. But if you follow the transhumanist route, got enough money, you can just pay for it all, instant, right? So And I would not look down on anyone for having to for choosing to go the transhumanist route. That's their business. Again, I'm not concerned with how other people do what they do. That's their fucking business, not mine. My business is how I do shit, and that's how everybody should be approaching their life. Should. It's how everyone could be approaching their life, right? That you can see, you make every effort then to try and bring out the very best in what you are, or you can go the easy route and just pay for it, right? But then it's just then you're constantly looking for upgrades. Why would it be any different than cell phones?
It would be interesting to see a gradient, because there would be a lot of selfish people trying to buy their way to, like,
immortality.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, actually.
Or anti-aging, right? And again, those are one of the chief things that drive people who are interested in transhumanism. And just so that you were clear, depending on who you ask, there's as little as 10,000 to as many as 2 million transhumanists in the world. So it's an idea that has a certain degree of appeal. Clearly,
how they identify as transhumanists.
Well, I think it might be the to the degree of the way that they would want to augment themselves, okay. like how much they would augment themselves. So, and again, I bet you that's just as varied and as different as anybody. But say, what if you wanted to max out as a cyborg? So then you'd have the perfect blend of organic intelligence and inorganic intelligence. So you'd amplify your own memory with computer memory, your physical all your physical abilities from raw strength, durability. You'd have a way to using technology, they'd reinforce your biology to make you like more resistant to damage, stronger, faster, and it'll only cost you like $20 million. But because you're, it's going to, reduce your aging or provide you immortality in a manner of speaking, it'll only cost you so much every month for the next 80 years. You're good.
Yeah, getting a subscription.
You get your subscription to your upgrades. You've accumulated so many points. You can put them towards your next purchase. Like, come on.
God forbid you're late for a payment.
How would they come after you then for that? Or we're going to have to recall that part.
Yeah.
So again, it's just it's interesting to see that this idea that stemmed when we talked about it, eugenics, and that humans are trying to, it seems, to transcend the limitations of what they imagine that they currently are, to push the boundaries of that. And I'm like, you could do that without the technology. You can push the boundaries of the limitations of who you are through correct learning, discipline, and training. You can do it all on your own. But again, it's the hard sell because it's all uphill. Well, whereas with transhumanism, it's just a matter of, you got enough money, you can buy it, right? So any kind of, okay, so when you do this with humans, when you make that kind of, when you create that kind of distinction, it inevitably creates division, right? And it's funny, we're moving more and more closely to a two-class system as it is currently. So it's those, the haves and the have-nots, right? And now you're going to couple this transhumanism and the technology that allows for it, which would only be basically for those who could afford it. So again, for the haves. So it further defining the division between reducing us to two groups, human and post-human, right?
Yeah, with the haves and have-nots, I feel like there's a lot of people that believe if you're in a certain echelon in Canada, like, I'm using Canada as an example. Like,
well, it's because where we live.
Right, you have like a certain amount of wealth where you have not one mansion, but you also have like a cottage in another country. Which
is another home. Right?
Yeah, in a boat and luxury cars, all these things. They think they're the haves. It's like, no. At the beginning, a millionaire is nothing compared to a billionaire.
Right.
You're part of the have-nots, even if you're so rich, you own hundreds of people, not own hundreds of people, but like, you know, employ.
Well, with all this technology that we're talking about, you could see where then you would have, you know, in the two-class system where the haves would have the ability now to create the perfect offspring. So what they would do is because it was just a matter of genetic material and then augmenting the genetic material, and we know that they treat DNA as language to decipher it. So you could, if you were a couple from the haves, and you had enough wealth to do it, they would just be able to draw your genetic material from each partner, amalgamate them, and then basically create a tailor-made child, and the child would exhibit, at least genetically, like what genetics would allow for, the maximum expression of the genetics. And so basically now you're creating like superhumans. So now not only is it a two-tier system, but now you're going to have the most fit humans and the most unfit humans. You see where the division gets further, the divide gets greater and greater between the two groups, because that's the dangers of what we're talking about. So like, again, it would be ill-served if we just presented this purely as good or purely as bad, right? That here it's complicated, and it's as complicated as we are, and we are so complicated, right? And we go out of our way to make shit more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, this conversation, just the alleys it goes into, like, it's so different. I feel like it's kind of tough, like nailing Jello to the wall. But you think of the extremes of good or bad, regardless, the rate of change, it could, I'm speaking out of my ass, within a generation, it could change so drastically.
Even less. Like a generation's usually considered between 20 to 30 years. I'm thinking that a decade, less than a decade, 5 years.
Right. People mention there's a critical point at which there's a critical point for literally anything, depends on what the goal is. If you think, oh, you know, in 5 years we're going to hit the critical point, and then another 12 to 24 years, it's like, boom, everything is different. How quickly did that happen in technology, like computers alone?
Right. So it was a very short period of time. So like I said, I think that what we're confronted with is like something that typically we've only ever thought about in terms of science fiction. And usually the way the science fiction is presented, it's never very favorable for us as human beings. And the reality is it could go horribly awry, but conversely, it could actually lead to, I don't want to use the word golden age, but it wouldn't, it might not be inaccurate to use that as a descriptor, right?
Silicon age.
However you'd like to refer to it. One of the most common arguments against transhumanists is the idea that they're playing God, and here's where anyone who lives by a faith-based ideology, they see them as being misguided and usurping God's greater plan, right? That the master plan of creation. And so you can see where that for some of them, that they see this as like, I don't want to call it the work of the devil, but it's contrary to their religious ideologies. It's in direct opposition to it, and so then it demonstrates nothing but conceit and arrogance, and it's misguided because the potential of how horrible this could go, right? And whether even though that they may feel that way, that's not going to prevent it from happening. Here's the other thing. All this stuff we're talking about is currently going on. It's happening. Whether you want it to happen or not, it's a part of what's occurring. So my response is that would simply be to say that then you need to develop a psychology that has a capacity to be able to deal with this regardless of however it plays out. And again, you can only develop that psychology through discipline, training, and learning. That's the only way for for us ordinary humans, us dirty, filthy humans. That's the only way for us to exist and function and present in a way that to accommodate the fact that we might be experiencing radical changes in a very short period of time. So it requires us to, I hate to use the expression, to man up. Right? It requires you then to go the extra distance. But, to me, like I said, to me there's enormous appeal to the struggle. So I'd rather struggle to try and psychologically and intellectually be able to have enough room to accommodate for these things. I might be wrong. I could be completely overwhelmed. All of us could. But then again, that could be wrong. It could go in completely different directions. There's no real way to tell. And those who might know, they're not saying. So then it's left to us meatheads to sit here, you and I, to try and come to terms with it, and the hopes that anyone's listening to this that they might in fact find a way to come to terms with all of this, because there's no avoiding it. It's happening, right? That's the thing that we need to understand, that this is going to happen now, and then however it plays out is however it's going to play out, and you're going to be left with either dealing with it or not dealing with it. That those will be the only two choices.
Unfortunately, I feel like we as people always want to know what's going to happen in the future. We always want to have that security of, I can predict what's going on.
Yeah.
This is such a fucking mixed bag.
Yeah, there's no way to predict how this is going to play out. And the fact of the matter is, the best thing that you can do is to fortify yourself intellectually, psychologically, spiritually, however, whatever languages, strength of character, to be able to deal with this or not to deal with this. And the alternative, like not dealing with it, means you succumb to it. You're buried by it, overwhelmed by it, or used by it. I don't want to be any of those things.
Right. And it could be as simple as you lose your job to a machine. Okay, that's not so bad compared to like the Terminator type shit we've been talking about.
Right. So
it's worth consideration.
Okay, so to add another wrinkle to all of this, there is a transhumanist Bill of Rights. Right? So it focuses on protecting the rights of human beings, genetically modified human beings, cyborgs, digital intelligence, intellectually enhanced, previously non-sapient animals, any species or plant or animal that has been enhanced to possess the capacity for intelligent thought, and other advanced sapient life forms. So that means, remember we were talking about the synthetic biological intelligence. You take a baboon and you integrate the computer technology in with its nervous system and increasing its intellectual capacity to now it being another genuine non-human intelligence. Or you could do that with virtually any animal out there.
Pinky in the Brain, good example in my opinion.
Might work, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I actually don't know what the background for him is, if he was enhanced or if he was.
Who's that?
The Brain.
Oh, again, we're talking about fictional characters. I think there was a mutation or something like that, right? But in terms of like them being able to tamper with DNA, it's not just human DNA. It's any organism that's out there. They could tailor make organisms, which wouldn't look like anything that exists. It makes you wonder, like, does that mean that they could create like mythological creatures?
I think that would be interesting.
Through genetics, like, yeah, but then like you go, like, now you're gonna create an invasive species and introduce it into the wild, but again, then they would argue, well, then we just find a way to undo it within the natural order of like.
I wouldn't trust that answer.
Oh, dude, I don't either. But again, they'll offer up any kind of justification, and this transhumanist Bill of Rights, it covers any kind of higher cognitive function that you could create, whether it's organic, inorganic, or some kind of tailor-made organisms. And that's what we were talking about, like the tailor-making humans, so that you could. So it's not limited to everything's on the table.
Right. I was just thinking, like, how funny would it be if someone's like, "Hey, watch out! You almost stepped on my pet asparagus."
Or worse, you could have centaurs running around.
Oh my god!
Right? And then what do you once they create it? Then what do you do? It's an abomination. We got to destroy. Well, wait a minute. It's intelligent. It's living. Do you have the right now?
Right.
So it gets like you get in.
The idea of culture itself would be flipped upside down and backwards.
Can you imagine? Again, can you imagine? Right? Or you could have humans who are biologically humans but exhibit characteristics from other animal life forms. So instead of hair, you have feathers. You have snake eyes or cat eyes. They're still humans, but you're tailor making the organism, that their skin isn't a single tone, that they could have patterns and stripes, and all that stuff is programmable, genetically speaking. And if DNA is just a language that they've deciphered, then there's no limitations. You could have pointed ears like Mr. Spock from Star Trek, if that's what so did it for you, or create tailor-made organisms that like the Klingons, where they have their skeleton is an exoskeleton, and all the stuff on all the gooey stuff is on the inside. Not like us. We have a skeleton that's the framework, and then we put all the gooey stuff on the outside of the skeleton. So, in terms of like where transhumanism could go, talking dog. Never mind. I love my dog. Well, now your dog's able to. You wet wire the dog with a computer, and it's got a voice modulating package so that it'll just talk to you. Why'd you do that, man? I don't like the gravy when you mix it in with my food. Come on. I like the carrots. Why didn't you put the carrots in with the food? Did you just shut up and eat your food? Can you imagine?
Yeah. No, I can imagine, like, having a roommate that's also a pet that you have to take care of. It's like, hey, feed me. I have no thumbs. What the hell?
No opposable thumb. I can't leave the house. I'm gonna shit on the floor if you don't let me out in the backyard.
Hey, where do you put my balls? Where's my balls? That's a reference to a show. Okay,
it's all good, but it's just like I said. You can see where it just gets way, way out there.
Yeah.
Way, way out there. So having said all that, like, again, this is a subject that I think you could go on endlessly about, and there's no right way to approach this. And the fact of the matter is that it's happening. How bizarre and far afield and it's going to get, we won't know until it's actually happening. So
I think it would be a huge benefit if everybody individually at least went through, like, just kind of the motions of, like, hey, what do you think about AI? What does it feel like to you? How would you integrate it? Like, just for speculation, I think most people could have fun with this topic.
And just in terms of conversation, yeah, you can.
It's a blast.
You could get a ton of mileage in this conversation, and when we bring this conversation to a close, it won't mean that we've come to any definitive conclusions, because there aren't any. Because this thing is so open, it can go in any direction. Here's the most craziest thought: what if it goes into all those directions? Like, you know what I mean? That all those things become realized. So all the things that they potentially imagine to be real, they make it real. They manifest it real, right? So then, like I said, it'll be like base humans, genetically designed humans, cyborgs, machines that are trying to be living organisms, machines that want nothing to do with being living organisms, digital intelligence that it's just a mind that floats through the internet that is completely disembodied.
Oh, that would be I was gonna say cool, but that's terrifying.
This,
Yeah, what if it's a totally cool thing? Like it pops up on your screen, it's like, oh,
hey man, what are you doing?
yeah, I've never been here before. What are you looking at?
Can you imagine? Like I said, it's just it stymies the imagination. Like for me, it just one of those things that, and this is not the first time I've had a conversation with regards to this, but it again that no matter how many times you revisit this conversation, there's no way to know how this is going and how it'll play itself out, and yet, and we're going to be confronted with the experience. Because it's within the foreseeable future. It's not happening in 20 or 30 or 50 years. It's happening right now. Right? So that's, again, that's kind of wild to think about. I'd like to, I think, finish on just to show you that, like, again, that that there are really credible people who are talking about this stuff and promoting it. I'm just going to read a list of a few short of some transhumanists who promote transhumanism and actively participating in trying to make it a real thing. So Raymond Kurzweil is an American computer scientist, author, inventor, and futurist. He is involved in the fields such as optical character recognition, text-to-speech synthesis, speech recognition technology, and electronic keyboard instruments. There's a man who's renamed himself FM 2030, who is Belgian-born Iranian-American author, teacher, transhumanist philosopher, futurist, consultant, Olympic-level athlete. He became notable as a transhumanist with the book, Are You a Transhuman? Monitoring and Stimulating Your Personal Rate of Growth in a Rapidly Changing World, published in 1989. Sir Julian Sorel Huxley was an English evolutionary biologist, eugenicist, and internationalist, and he was the proponent of natural selection and a leading figure in the mid-20th century modern synthesis. Nick Bostrom, a Swedish philosopher at the University of Oxford, known for his work on existential risk, the anthropic principle, human enhancement, ethics, whole brain emulation, and superintelligence risks and reversal test. He's the founding director of the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford University. Max Moore, a philosopher and futurist who writes, speaks, and consults on advanced decision-making about emerging technologies. He's the current ambassador and president emeritus after serving almost 9.5 years as president and CEO of Alcor Life Extension Foundation. Only a couple more. David Pearce, a British transhumanist philosopher. He's the co-founder of the World Transhumanist Association, currently rebranded and incorporated as Humanity Plus. Pearce approaches ethical issues from a lexical negative utilitarian perspective. And Stefan Lorenz Sorgner, a German meta-humanist philosopher, a Nietzsche scholar, a philosopher of music, and an authority in the field of ethics and emerging technologies. And David John Chalmers, an Australian philosopher and cognitive scientist specializing in the areas of philosophy of mind and philosophy of language. He's a professor of philosophy and neuroscience at New York University, and as well as a co-director of New York University's Center for Mind, Brain, and Consciousness. And the last one I'd like to mention is Jaron Zeppel-Lanier, an American computer scientist, visual artist, computer philosopher, writer, and technologist, futurist, and composer of contemporary classical music. So it's a who's who of intellects. And so it would be wrong to say that all intellects are like endorsing this, but you can see now, like, we're in the face of an ever-changing world. And for those who have the capacity, that the entire transhumanist agenda is appealing. And the brain power that's supporting this, again, is it any greater than the brain power supporting any kind of specialized field in science? Maybe, maybe not. But these guys are talking about something where you're talking about radically changing the face and the shape of humanity.
I was going to say with Max Moore there, being an Olympian and the CEO to that company, it's a little. It seems like something that would be.
Actually, it wasn't Max Moore. It was FM 2030, who was an Olympic level athlete. And again, I didn't take any deeper dive into just identifying. And it's a man whose now name is FM 2030.
Right. I was gonna say, assuming that he was both the Olympian and the person working at this what was it called again? Trans-humanist Association.
What was it? Humanity Plus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying, like, if he works for that company and he's also an Olympian, he probably knows like what's a reasonable limit to set. So from him to go Olympian to CEO of that or CEO.
Well, I think it
of
was
Olympian,
in conjunction with being an academic and an intellectual. He also happened to be an Olympic caliber athlete.
right. I feel like that would be a level of awareness where he's like, not only do I know there's certain limitations that I've hit as a professional Olympian.
Oh, in terms
Like-
of the physical limits, yeah. I think the idea of the transhumanist and being able to sort of radically and revolutionarily push the limits of what it means to be human. Can you imagine the kind of strength you might have if your entire skeletal system was enhanced with machine parts that are integrated with the biological, your muscles and stuff, all to make them stronger, faster, the bones stronger and faster, without adding like significant weight to the body beyond like might be considered normal. Suddenly, you're doing a 30-foot leap. What human can do a 30-foot leap? That's comic book stuff, man. Like, but with the transhumanists, you could see where that might be feasible. And then for somebody who's got means and money, suddenly appeals in doing that. I just want to be able to leap to the top of a lamppost and grab onto it and do chin-ups.
He bought the legs, but if he jumps up there and he can't do a single pull-up, it's like, what are you doing?
Well, if he's buying the legs, I would imagine that, like, to be able to have the legs, that means that the spinal column has to be reinforced. That means the shoulder girdle, means your hips, everything. You don't just you're not getting one thing. It had to be a package, right?
Yeah,
or you pull yourself apart.
Right, you jump so hard, all your organs would squish against the metal stumps.
Right. So I can see the appeal, right? Although to me personally, it's not very appealing. But I do appreciate the fact that, like, where someone might see that as a benefit. Imagine what it would do for amputees. They'd never have to live with that at all anymore in terms of it'd be a radical change to their life and their day-to-day existence. People in wheelchairs would no longer have to be. So transhumanism would allow for that no matter what the deficit was or whatever the problem was, that there's a workaround, and you'd be able to give more functional capacity to people now that have diminished capacity, right?
That's where I see the most benefit for these things. Just having it so if something happened to somebody, they don't have to live the rest of their life with the psychological damage of, like, say, losing their legs.
But
they're not at a deficit anymore.
Well,
I think
okay.
that's beautiful.
Right. Again, you can. I'll say it again. You can see the appeal, but think about what it would do to. Think about all the people in sanitariums, all the people who are like completely dysfunctional because their brains are not fully developed. Now you integrate an artificial intelligence with their organic intelligence, and now they're completely functional, and they no longer need to be housed in sanitariums or places where they can be monitored 24 hours. Now they're completely independent. And going, okay, again, it's an argument that you're going like, well, I could kind of see the advantage to that, but again, there are a lot of people who would see that as like like that's blasphemy, or it's it's an affront. It's an affront to being human, right? Like, so I guess I get it, but the reality is that, like I said, to me personally, there's no appeal for me. I would rather, again, I'd rather seek self-mastery through discipline, training, and learning, and then maybe within the natural human limits, produce maybe to a much lesser degree what these guys are talking about. But these guys are talking about like becoming superheroes, man. Like, right? Like,
I like playing
Star
with the
Trek
idea.
for real, man. Like,
Oh, I was just saying, I like playing with the idea, but these people who are all in, I'm too nervous to do that. I love
like,
it. I love the idea though.
and I don't think there's anything wrong with like finding it appealing. I don't. It's just, again, it's just any one individual having a personal bias with regards to what we're talking about, and you can feel any way you want. You can be disgusted by it, or find it exciting, and maybe like wringing your hands in the hopes that you can actually have it happen sooner than later. Like I said, for myself, I find it kind of the thing that it's worthy of considering, and it's worthy of you taking your time to sort of figure this stuff out, because it is happening, and then to the degree that which it will happen, I can't say that I know with any real certainty, but other than the fact that it's happening, and that psychologically we need to fortify ourselves to be prepared for the fact that this may very well come to fruition in a way that like nobody expected, and a timetable much shorter than anyone ever dared imagine, right? Like, so again, it's an exciting premise, and it's an exciting conversation, right? The very idea of artificial intelligence, synthetic intelligence, biological synthetic intelligence, post-humanism, and transhumanism. I mean, like, just, right? It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, this is a perfect subject because it's not like there's a right or wrong to it. It's just this vast scope of uncertainty, and like, oh, wouldn't it be cool this way or that way?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is a philosopher's paradise, because you can go, okay, what is humanity? What is living? What is consciousness?
Yeah, you get
the nitty-gritty in this.
100%. You can get so much mileage out of this in terms of conversation. Now, having said all that, I think I'm kind of done with the subject, unless there's something that you'd like to say in closing. Actually, before we do, can we get a time check?
2 hours in, and it's 4:26. I was just gonna say,
sounds like time to say goodnight. Sayonara. Go on.
oh, sayonara.
No, you just say what you want. This is your opportunity. Any last thoughts with regards to the subject?
Yeah, check a video. In 20 years from now, I'm gonna have like an additional cyborg leg that can contain
3 legs?
Yeah, I gotta pee so bad. I need a storage container, so I don't have to like stop the podcast. I'll buy you a nice was it Marvel trash can, so you can just pee in it, and then we can talk for 4 straight hours, no problem.
Okay, so thanks for that. I appreciate it. What a nice note to end it all on. In closing, I'd like to say, question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. Seek balance, seek knowledge, seek understanding. Become a renegade, individualist, humanist, critical, objective thinker. Thank you for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you.